Okay, we're live now.
Perfect. Maybe I'll keep going, Rachel?
Yeah, keep going.
All right, okay, so this is the commencement of the policy committee meeting. We'd like to acknowledge that we're privileged to meet on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Squamish and St'át'imc nations. We have a recommendation for our agenda.
I can make that motion.
Go ahead.
That the agenda of this meeting be approved.
I can say that.
Perfect. All right, carried. For our minutes, we have a recommendation.
That the minutes of the policy committee meeting held on April 13th, 2022 be adopted.
I'll second that.
All right, carried. Are there any trustee items? No, none. All right, moving on. There's no presentations, no information items. For discussion items, first is policy 204A again, trustee code of conduct sanctions. Chris and Danielle, please go ahead.
Thank you, Celeste, again for the sake of the public. If you see members in this meeting smiling, giggling, or looking off to the side, it's because we've got a lovely group of children right outside our door having a fantastic time, and there's yelling and screaming and laughter. So we may ask for folks on the Zoom to repeat, and it's not because we're not listening or you're not loud enough. It's just that we're competing with some raucous excitement outside at the moment. So with that, I'll launch right in and thank everyone for their continued feedback and work on this policy. It is a very important one moving forward. So I just want to again express my gratitude to everyone for the hard work going in. You all have in the package both a clean version and a track changes version, where we did our best to incorporate many of the suggestions from the last board meeting. Specifically, I'll just point out a few things. We wanted to ensure, and thank you to Celeste for this suggestion, that we're clear that these sanctions follow a process of following the principles of progressive discipline, and we brought that right up to the top to sort of set the stage for what follows. To be clear that we go through a series of steps first, starting with conciliatory measures before moving into the official complaint process. So we made that change. We made the housekeeping changes around some wording and consistency with chair and vice chair. In the official complaint process, we extended the opportunity for filing the letter. That's number 4, to move to that 60-day period, as there was a suggestion that 30 might be too short for such an important consideration. Cleaned up some language around acceptance of email as opposed to a formal written letter. And then again, some housekeeping things around timing, to be clear when we speak about days, whether it's 5 days, 60 days, 10 days, these are all business days, commonly understood to be Monday through Friday, not inclusive of holidays. So clarified that. Again, some housekeeping clarity in number 6. Number 7, again, extending the time to receive information. Number 8, same thing, increased from 3 to 5. I ensured that in receipt of a letter of support, that's number 8, that the senior staff is also aware, so that Secretary Treasurer can convene the meeting. That would be that responsibility of staff, not of the chair. And then in number 9, some clarity from 9.1 through 9.7. It was rather wordy, so rather than repeating the same things over and over again, just wanted to refer to the trustee who had the concern as a complainant, and the trustee responding to the concern as a respondent. And it just, when you see it in the clean version, it just makes it a little easier to follow, a little easier to read. So thank you for that. 9.3 again was some cleanup of language to make it much clearer. Minor change in 9.3.1. Included, I think we had this before, so I don't know why it's still in blue. That's probably my mistake, or maybe that was new information, but just to be clear that some direction for the board and following the policy that when they're having a conversation regarding the alleged incident, that you know, it must be based on a credible assembly of facts. And then moving down to number 11, when and where sanctions would be reported out, what that would look like, to be really clear that you would name, the board chair would name the citation, referring back to the code of conduct, a very brief description of the brief and any resulting sanction. And of course, if that sanction was against the board chair, the vice chair would be the one to report out. And then the reminder at the end, and thank you, Celeste, for that piece, that you know, whenever anyone is sanctioned, there always needs to be opportunity to ensure procedural fairness, and that is through the office of the ombudsperson. So we included that with a link, and also included that addition into the flowchart to make it very clear. And I'll just comment on one other suggestion. I was speaking with Dave Duncan about this and spoke with him about so many other pieces. And I think, Celeste, you had made the suggestion, could we add in there that our old trustees have access to EFAP, so that program for support. And he had felt that, well, that wouldn't necessarily need to be stated in this policy, but that what we would commit to doing is ensuring that in our orientation process, that would actually be the place to have a fulsome, you know, understanding of what that is, how to access it, what is it for, and a sanction, for example, would be provided as one of those instances, but not necessarily the only one. So rather than have it in this policy, felt let's actually up its importance and have that as part of any onboarding or orientation moving forward. And what I would like to suggest too, with permission, is just to make that housekeeping change and ensure that we have it. It would be, I think, either in the code of conduct or the rules of trustee. I can't remember what Dave and I settled on, but that we'd actually move it a little bit further up in the policy to capture it there as well. So hopefully we've incorporated changes as proposed, and I'm happy to receive any other comments. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, that sounds great, Chris. Thank you so much. Any comments from trustees? No one? I have a few. If I don't want to jump in too soon, if anyone else has comments that they'd like to make, please just raise your hand. If so, so for section 4, it was just the bit about, and I think it just might be me, this could be totally stylistic, so everybody just carry on. It was for section 4, where it said a letter in the form of or via email is acceptable. I don't know, I have a hard time with that sentence, but not a hill I'm gonna die on. So section 8, it says 5 business days, and section 5, I think. Yeah, it says 5 business days and section 5, but I think it's supposed to say 10 business days in section 7. Is that right? You with me on that one, Chris?
I forgot to turn the mic on. I believe it does. I think we made that change because before we had it number in 7 that it was 3 days, and so we did move that to 10.
Yeah, I think it was changed in one area and it probably just got missed in this one. So that was just, it's super minor housekeeping point, but So in section 8, that's my comment for that one, 10 business days and it should say section 7, not section 5.
Oh, sorry. Yes. You know what? I think I misunderstood the, when you pointed it out the last time. So Archie, do we have it now? Yes, we will make
Okay.
that change. Thanks.
Okay, no worries. Super small. I mean, we've been at this for a long time and it's a lot for sure. Section 9.6. My notes say the reasons for the resolution should be documented and filed with the Secretary Treasurer. So, I think just in the interests of kind of completeness, excuse me, not just what the result of the deliberation was, but being really careful to kind of follow any, it says here, any resolutions. Sorry, I've lost where I am in my notes. What I'm trying to get at is that we need to have the reasons documented and stored along with the decision itself. It can't just be the board came to this decision and this is what it is. We need to have documentation that gives reasons for the decision in case the decision is ever contested, so that it's very clear why the assembly came to the decision that it did, and the documentations for those reasons need to be lodged with the Secretary Treasurer, which I believe is covered later in the policy. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yes, and I do believe that is covered in 9.8. All documentation related to the code of conduct hearing shall be returned to the Secretary Treasurer designated immediately upon conclusion of the code of conduct hearing and shall be retained in accordance with legal requirements. So I feel we've captured it in the spirit there.
It might be, yeah, it might be. I think I was just being a real stickler for making sure that the reasons are explicitly written down and very carefully documented. So if and when any decision is ever questioned, that there's a very good sort of trail of reasoning as to why, not just what that final outcome is. But again, not a hill I'm prepared to die on if others feel comfortable with it as it's written now. Anybody have any comments before I move on? No? Okay, section 11. Sanctions arising from 10.2 or 10.3 above. I think that's what it should say.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay, super small again. And the final note that I have on this is that I think that it looks really good. And, thank you to staff again for all of the time that we've spent working on this policy. My concern is, has always been, I think I've articulated this before, is just the potential for abuse. But I think that the way that it's laid out now is a very good start, and we'll just have to watch this one over time. And if it becomes apparent that amendments to the policy are needed to protect everyone involved, then we can do that as it comes up. But I think it's a great start, and I'm really thankful for all the work that everyone's put into it.
All right, excellent. No, thank you. And as I said in the beginning, these policies are important, and like Celeste, just expressing gratitude for the time, because it is very important. And I 100% agree, Celeste, that hopefully we never have to apply this policy, but if we do, and if we have to tweak it, this would be one of those ones that I would recommend, we don't wait the 4-year cycle for. We make the amendment as needed, because it is so important to, ensure healthy functioning of the board. So yeah, thank you as well.
Would you like a motion to bring this before the board this evening, Chris? Or I guess we can do sort of perhaps all of these at once. I know that this was the one that was left over from last time. So shall we carry on through and then perhaps have a motion for all of them?
I think that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, so if no one else wants to jump in with anything, we'll move down to 6B, policy 210, trustee remuneration. Chris and Danielle, please.
Hi, I have a bit of a cold, so I might sound a little bit off. I just updated, I'll just give some brief highlights on the reasons I made the changes that I made to the trustee remuneration. So one of the things that I changed in the policy is that I changed the trustee remuneration to be reviewed every year rather than every 2 years. As it states right now that the remuneration would be reviewed every 2 years. And the reason why is that compared to most other school districts, and they're all doing every year, they're updating the salaries every year. And then another thing that I changed as a result of that is I changed that the remuneration would increase directly linked to the previous year's change in BC, the CPI index, the consumer price index for the year before rather than the 2-year average, because we'd be updating the salary or the remuneration every year rather than every 2 years. So, which is consistent with what other school districts are doing. And then another thing that I changed is that I made this effective every January 1st so that it's in line with the calendar year. And one of the other things that you probably noticed is that I removed the amounts of the remuneration from the policy itself. And the reason why is that I've checked with other school districts and they do not have their amounts in their policy because they're updating the salary every year. And they're probably only reviewing their policy like every few years or 4 years like us. And so it doesn't make sense to update the policy every year. We just keep the salary outside of there. So basically what I've changed it to, it's more similar, or sorry, I just also want to say, I did some analysis based on, I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at like what the actual compensation is, but I did some analysis based on other school districts our size, and we're very comparable, like we're very close. So I think we're pretty in line there. So I think in general, these changes will be more in line with what other school districts are doing. Yeah. So love to hear your thoughts, everybody.
Any comments from trustees? Cynthia, go ahead.
I think you did a great job on that, Danielle, and I think it's nice to have our policy look a little bit more consistent to what the other policies across the province look like. So I think it looks good to me, and I'm sure it was a lot of work, so thank you for that.
Anyone else? I would agree, Danielle. I think it looks good, and I had no comments on this one. So seeing no other hands raised, we'll move down the list to item 6C, policy 211, trustee expenses. Chris and Danielle.
It's me again. Me again. Yeah, of course, trustee expenses. Okay. I actually didn't change too much. I just tried to modernize the policy a bit because some of it's outdated. But I just wanted to go over some of the changes that you may want to note. So I removed the piece in the policy that says that mileage will be included in the non-taxable portion of remuneration, as that's not applicable anymore starting 2019. So the payroll changes came into effect January 1st, 2019, where it's no longer applicable. Where there's a piece of the remuneration that's non-taxable. So that's no longer in effect, so it's not applicable. The other thing I just clarified is that what we have in practice right now is that we reimburse for mileage at the BC government rate, which is the same rate we reimburse our employees. And a lot of school districts are using that rate or the BCSTA rate. So just to be consistent with what we're doing for employees, we're keeping it at the 55 cents for now, which is the BC government rate. One of the other things that that I removed from the policy is reference to facsimile, reimbursement of facsimile costs, because there's really no, I'm sure no trustees are incurring costs in relation to faxes. At least I hope not. So that's pretty outdated. And another thing I included is that our current practice is to reimburse the chair or board chair for up to $50 in mobile charges every month, because we're on the phone with the chair quite a bit. So this previously wasn't documented, and that's what our practice is. So I just put it into place what we're actually doing. And then I just put a little bit more clarity around like conferences and what's approved and what's pre-approved and how that goes there. So that's just a general and summary of any of the changes or some of the changes I made. So I'm happy to hear any comments anybody has.
Any comments from trustees? Ian, go ahead.
There, is that better? The title of this policy is trustee expenses, and then it goes on to talk about length of service. I see them being two different things. I see we didn't know where to put it, so we sort of put it in there with trustee expenses. Was this also the one that you get the PIN, the completion, and you get every 5 years thereafter? I'm not sure we need to get that specific with it. It
Yeah,
may
that's
not, I mean,
true.
I'm looking back on the 8
I
years.
think that was just left over from the last
It was
one, and
left
I was like,
over, and
"Oh,
I
just
don't know
leave
that
it."
it's needed and it makes any difference.
That's true. So Ian, you think we could just remove that whole piece, right?
I would.
I think it was probably the spirit of it was probably to pinpoint all the expenses that a trustee could incur, which would include possibly some expenses related to that, but it's not like a trustee would be claiming that, right? So good point. Thank you, Ian.
Anyone else?
I just had a teeny tiny housekeeping at 2.1 after, like on the second line of 2.1, maximum of $50. I don't know if you want to just put per month in there
Perfect.
in
Thank
case
you.
someone thinks it's per day.
Yeah. Yeah, not $50 per day for sure. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
That was my only question too. So, oh,
Do
Ian,
we
go
do
ahead.
it? Sorry. Do we do it that way? Like, I'm just trying to think of, the board chair has their own school board phone. So it isn't, I don't know that they're using their own home phone.
Our board chair is using her own
Okay.
home phone. So
Do you have a choice? Is it something that's automatic?
I'm not sure. What did we do previously? Okay. Or you could have a school district phone. So maybe I'll clarify. It could be a school district phone or a $50 investment for personal. Okay, great.
All right, any other comments on that one?
Where does it mention that trustees can use the computer, get loan? Is it in there? Did I miss it?
There's nothing in there about that. I can add something in there too. We can like where we provide office supplies.
Yeah. The technology is provided as well.
Is your computer it is.
It is. And I
Okay,
think there
'cause
are
some
others.
aren't. So,
And it was sort of at one time, there was a choice. You could go a computer or a phone.
oh really? Okay. That's good information. I thought everyone was using their own personal one. So, okay.
Well,
Are
I
you
don't know who
using
else.
your own personal one? Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Can I quickly add to that? I think that it's important that that is perhaps written in policy as being allowed, because it certainly could be a barrier. Having access to technology shouldn't be a barrier to doing this job. And in today's day and age, we might need to be meeting remotely. You know, you never know when suddenly we're going to be all online again, and having a computer is such an important part of doing the job. So we'll leave that with you, Danielle.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely going to add that in. So thank
Okay.
you, Ian. Thanks.
Anything else on this one before we move on? No? Okay. That takes us to 6D, Policy 212, Evaluation of the Board of Education. Chris and Danielle?
All right, I'll take this one. Thank you. So in reviewing this one, we took into consideration, you know, our last evaluation, which was relatively recently, and what that comprised of. And I wanted to ensure that the policy captured that. So I think we had a real good foundation to start with, but I wanted to just make it a little bit clearer, and was following some other, you know, looking at some other districts. So you'll note that I reorganized it a little bit, and just gave the explanation of, you know, the objectives, the schedule, the methodology of the evaluation, the results, and then actually moved the rubric or the performance scale as an appendix, because it's a very, very important part of the board's evaluation, self-evaluation, but it's not the only piece. So I wanted to ensure that we captured those opportunities for interviews and surveys and whatnot from specific folks, just to provide that additional input, which we did 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was. But I didn't get into specifics because wanted to ensure that this was at a level and a space that allows for some flexibility as the board develops and as we go. And again, rather than be too prescriptive about we will use these questions or this survey, that might evolve and change over time, and this would provide that opportunity to do so. But I did want to be really respectful and acknowledge the Elimina stuff, because I think that is super powerful. So kept performance scale as an appendix, and then sort of laid out the procedural stuff under each of those headings, 1 through 4. So I hope that's relatively cleaner, a little more specific, and is sort of broad enough to capture what we want to capture, but also tight enough to say this is what we will be doing, or the board will be doing. So thank you.
All right, any comments from trustees? Cynthia, go ahead.
Chris, thanks a lot for writing this policy up and making the changes that you did. I think what you just said really captures the spirit of it, in that it's specific enough yet flexible enough to make changes. The only thing that I thought of was in 2.1 around the time frame, when it says the end of the first year. Do we want to just simply change it to the end of the first calendar year? And the only reason I think that is if you gave yourself until December of that first year, as opposed to October when the election occurs, it might be tricky to do an evaluation prior to October, being that you've got the summer months in there and then you're just back for September.
Sorry, can you clarify end of so it's November to November?
Is it November to November or October to October? I wasn't sure.
So the elections are October,
and then the
first
next
board
become
meeting's November.
Oh, okay. Given
So-
that it's November, in my
And-
mind, it was October, but given that it's November, that would be perfectly fine.
Yeah, and first year of the 4-year term.
Yeah.
So it's term to term.
Yep.
Rather than specific to a calendar year, because if it were ever to change and the elections
Mm.
moved from, let's just say June to June,
Oh, yeah. That
then it
makes
would
good
still
sense
be
too.
within the
Yeah.
first year of the term. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good for you. Genius you. Yes, that's
No,
perfect.
no,
Yep. That makes good sense. Yeah. Leave it just as
Cheers.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, anyone else? Okay, no, I thought this one looked really good too, so I have no comments. So what shall we do about a motion then to bring these to the board for this evening?
I would appreciate that, policy committee.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion? Archie, maybe you can help us with the wording?
I think we're ready to bring all of them.
If the board is, or the board, sorry, if the policy committee is confident that we'll make those housekeeping changes in 204 as presented, then I would appreciate all the motions going forward.
I think it's pretty minor, the things that need to be addressed, so it's doable as long as you all feel good with it.
I'm comfortable with that. Ian is giving the thumbs up.
Okay, can I just get someone to make the motion then, please?
I could make something up off the top of my head. Oh, excuse me. Here we go. That the policy committee recommend the Board of Education approve policy 204A, trustee code of conduct sanctions, policy 210, trustee remuneration, 211, trustee expenses, and 212, evaluation of Board of Education.
Perfect, thank you, Cynthia. Any opposed? No, seeing that, it's carried. And we'll move down to questions of clarification from the public. Danielle?
There's nothing there.
Nothing yet? Okay, all right, there'll be opportunity later if anyone has questions. And that brings us to adjournment. Any opposed? No, all right.